this guide, I'm going to show you how to create a LoRA, a quick and easy way on CivitAi. If you go to CivitAi, you can find information if you go to their models and go to LoRa's for whatever model you're wanting to use. You'll find a bunch of different options for types of models that do everything from a style to a character to all kinds of different effects. Now, if you want to make one of these LoRa's yourself, you're going to go to this area over here. You're going to click on this. You're going to scroll down to Buzz Dashboard, and you're going to scroll down to the section right here where it says Train. Now, you're going to need Buzz on your account in order to train on here, and it varies on how much it costs for different models. I'm going to train an SDXL model, which is 500 Buzz, or like CivitAi currency. That equates to about 50 cents. So it does cost you about 50 cents. I think the least amount you can put on CivitAi is like 5,000 for like $5. But you also can earn Buzz via just posting stuff on CivitAi and things like that. So you can sort of earn enough Buzz to just do this via just doing their little bounties or other kinds of ways, and so you can earn. So like this account isn't fresh for my YouTube account, and so it's got 638, but all of this came from the amount that you get baseline on CivitAi from just doing random stuff. But again, you know, I think it's like you can put like $5 at a minimum on there to get like 5,000 Buzz, and an SDXL training is like 500. I think as Flux trainings are 2,000 right now, but in this case, I'm planning on training an SDXL LoRA. So I'm going to train it. I have prepared my data set to be trained. In this case, I'm using sort of just a basic data set for this tutorial that I made with just by generating images in Stable Diffusion. You would probably want to curate images more than I have done for this tutorial, or at the very least, have a little bit more control over the images you're using. I just generated these up relatively quickly for this tutorial. So I'm going to show you what those look like real fast. Okay, so here's a quick example of the images that I'm going to use for this LoRA training. Now, these images are just something I generated with Stable Diffusion, so they're just kind of generic images for this character. You know, the details are, generally speaking, they have red hair, they've got like a tail, fox ears, and they've got like a yellow jacket and some kind of katana-oriented thing. So it's not perfect. If I was wanting to train this model at a high level and really want it to be really good, I would want more detail in the face. I would want more detail in the character. I'd want things to be 100% matching, or as close to possible as matching. So for instance, like you can see this image right here, the ears look one way, and then this image, the ears look a different way, right? It's like, this is not ideal for like getting a super well-made LoRA done. But again, this is just for the tutorial, so you get the basic understanding. So I have quite a few images here. You can do a LoRA training with less images than this and a lot more images than this. There are benefits to having more images in some cases, but above or below a certain threshold is kind of not ideal. So I would suggest at least 10 images and probably less than 60 images, unless your thing is very complicated, like very specific, or it has many different variations, right? So for instance, if you were training a character and you wanted the LoRA to contain multiple outfits for that character, then putting in a large number of images where there's, I don't know, 10 plus of each outfit type, but the character stays the same. Or in some cases, people will make LoRA's that have multiple characters in them, right? So you'd be putting a lot of images in there, and they'd be a different character set for each batch of images, right? So, you know, maybe 15 or 20 images of one character and 15 or 20 images of another character and another character and another character, so on. And then that's mostly going to come down to how you caption or tag the images to make sure that they are correctly tagged or captioned as the correct character, so that when you call for that character, when you're using the LoRA, that you get the right information. All right, so in order to train the LoRA, again, you're going to go to the Buzz dashboard, you're going to scroll down to this area right here, and you're going to hit Train Now. Now, in this case, I'm training a character. There are ways to do this for multiple different types of LoRA's, where like, you know, you're doing an outfit or art style or a certain type of aesthetic or object, you know, like a specific make and model of a car, then you're probably gonna want to go with like concept. Same thing with like art style. If you're trying to really kind of capture your own art style or someone else's art style or something like that, then this is probably the best option. They are labeled as such to be the most helpful for training which one. There are ways to train LoRA's that are, you have a lot more control over the settings, and to be honest, training LoRAs is a little bit of luck and quite a bit of understanding what has worked in the past and using that to sort of perfect or make better models, right? So for instance, if you really want a very well trained, hyper accurate, very useful LoRA, you're probably going to train it multiple times. The tweaking of certain settings or adjustments of what images are in there or how you caption or tag them, all of those can have giant effects on the output. And then that's not even counting like number of steps or number of epochs or just so many different things that can sort of change it. But I'm just going to go with kind of a generic basic baseline LoRA training on CivitAi because it's pretty straightforward. You generally get pretty good results. For the first time you train a LoRA, it's probably going to be your best option for getting it done easily, getting it done quickly, and not messing it up multiple times before you get a good output. So as long as you have decent images on the input, you pick generally the correct settings, you pretty much get a LoRA that works out of CivitAi every time, versus a lot of the other training methods, which are a lot more complicated. Sometimes you have to run them on your own personal system or figure out a way to do it on Google Colab or a cloud service or something like that. It just has a lot of extra hoops to jump through, and then you've got to perfect the settings or use someone else's settings and hope they happen to work well for what you're doing. All of those things sort of allow you to make potentially a better LoRA, but they also are a lot more complicated. So this is going to kind of be like a pretty straightforward, easy, basic tutorial for how to do it on CivitAi. I'm creating a character, so I'm going to select this. Now, this name part is kind of up to you. You can name it however you want. Now, for my personal use, I'll name it something very easy for me to functionally use. When you use LoRAs, depending on the way you're using them, you can put their name in the thing so that it'll be in the prompt. There's a way to do a trigger word where you use a word within the LoRA's captions and tags to use that LoRA reliably or reinforce that LoRA. And so a lot of times what I do for these kind of LoRAs, especially if I'm just using it on my own system and not going to be posting it or whatever, then I'll just name it based on that. So in this case, I'm literally going to call it RF1. The reason that I'm doing it that way and not typing out Red Fox 1 is because the way that prompts read things is it kind of reads everything in your prompt. And so if your trigger word is something that is already tagged as something else, it can sort of incorporate that as part of the prompt. And so you kind of want to use something that is unlikely to be a word that got tagged. So RF1 probably has something somewhere in the model that is tagged as RF1, but it's not going to be nearly as common as a word like fox or red or anything like that. So RF1. So I'm going to just leave it like that. Make sure this is selected, RF1, hit next. Okay, so you're going to hit this here, and you have access to the part where you can put images in. Go to that other file that I had open. I'm going to select all the images and I'm going to drag them into this area right here. And now I have 43 images, and you see here that it says 0 of 43 label. Now I'm going to use SDXL, and so I'm going to tag these images rather than caption them, but both can work, and some are better for certain models than other models. Again, this is just a tutorial, so I'm going to do kind of the baseline stuff, but essentially you have a couple different options here, right? So I can add my trigger word right here. So I'm going to do that, RF1. That's going to be what my trigger word is. I'm going to tag them, and I'm going to do auto label. Now, again, if you're wanting to perfect a very specific and good LoRA, auto labeling can help, but you probably want to go in and specifically label things in a more accurate way, or maybe erase or edit whatever the auto labeling does, because it's essentially going to use a different AI to look at the image and say what is there. And those things are not foolproof and also oftentimes not even accurate. So depending on how many total images you have and how specific you want to be, going in and editing each image individually can be worth your time. It just kind of depends. So I'm going to hit auto label. I'm just going to go ahead and hit submit because I'm going to leave all of these other things at this baseline level because this is just a very basic. We're not going to mess with any of the base settings. We're just going to use their default settings. Okay, so it's going to run through the auto labeling process. So I'm going to look down here and we're going to see, okay, so let's look at some of these images. This one says one girl, weapon, animal ears, sword, solo, breasts, jacket, cleavage, red hair, katana. Now this is mostly fine. I think that I'm pretty much okay with this in general, right? There's not really a there's not really anything wrong or just straight up incorrect about these things. Now, they could have more tags that may be more accurate or more useful, but again, this is just a quick tutorial. So I'm not going to go through here and edit every single one of these images to be perfect because I'm just making this for the tutorial. But if I was very specific about some of these things, to be honest, I might run this the first time through with the auto labels and see what I got out on the other side to see how good it was. And then maybe when I run my second version, I might go in and edit some of these tags. So auto labeled, that's all of the things through a whole thing should have been labeled by this. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to make sure I click this one here. I don't want to share this data set because I'm just doing this for the tutorial. And then I'm going to hit next. And this part will take a little bit. Okay, so then it's going to come through this part where we sort of select some more options for the training LoRA. So we've got the resubmit. This is the name. It's a type, character, how many images, their tag. Then I could potentially do multiple trainings, which if I wanted to, I could do this, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do one training. Now, again, I'm going to do an SDXL training, and I'm not going to use a custom model or any of these others. I'm just going to select the standard SDXL. Now, there's a couple other options here. This one, for training parameters, these are where you're going to really tweak settings potentially as you go through the process. A lot of these settings have a lot of effect on your output, how long it takes, how well it trains, whether you're training well with a smaller number of images or a larger number of images. All of these things have a big effect on all that stuff. But since it's all really complicated and you could tweak a lot of these settings and very much mess up your results, we're going to leave this completely alone, and we're just going to go into sample image prompts, and I'm going to do two things. I'm going to type one girl like so. Then I'm going to type one girl and RF1 like that. And then I'm going to leave the other one automatically set. Now, this is not required. This is just to sort of give me a very baseline idea of how well this LoRA is working with the base model, which is not a very good test. But it is semi worth doing, because otherwise these are just completely randomized from the words that are in your tag list. And so you can get just completely weird images that don't match anything because they just randomly attach the words in there. So this one should be sort of just the effects of the LoRA. And then this one will be the effects of the LoRA with its trigger word. And then this will be just random words from the thing, which might include these words because they were in there, but in their own random thing. Again, just is not a right or wrong way to do this part specifically, at least in my opinion. You can just leave it blank, whatever. Anyway, so just to confirm everything, we've got standard SDXL, we've got these things part here. We're not going to do high priority because I'm not really worried about how long this takes, because it's just for the tutorial window, and it's cheaper. If I do high priority, you can see that it costs a little bit more, but there's no reason to do high priority in my opinion. It doesn't even say it's going to take less time. It definitely will take less time, but how much less is not very clear, right? So I'm just going to leave the basic time, and then I'm going to hit submit and confirm. Now, this part can take quite a while. It can take a short amount of time. It just kind of depends on how busy the site is and how everything's working that day. That is one of the negatives of this process, is this side of it is a little bit out of your control. CivitAi's website might go down, or it might be really slow, or whatever. This is just kind of, you just have to wait, right? Okay, so I will come back and check on this when it is done, and then we'll continue the video there. Okay, so when your training is done, you're going to go to this tab here that says training. And then you'll find the model that you trained. You can click on it like this. And then you're going to get a bunch of information here that says epochs. This is going to be very dependent on your model and how it trained. So you may want to grab all the epochs. We want to grab some of the epochs. Just looking at this, the final epoch seems pretty okay. And you can see that like these images right here, they don't look super great, but that's because these were done with the base SDXL model. But they do look like they picked up a decent amount of the LoRa's influence as far as like look. So I'll go ahead and download this number 10 epoch. Now that we have the LoRa, we need to test it and test the kind of comparative output with and without it, just to make sure that it, basically works. Again, this is just a kind of basic tutorial. So first of all, we're going to generate with no LoRa and a pretty simple prompt. I'm going to use just one girl and I'm gonna use anime in my prompt because I'm not using an anime oriented checkpoint, just to kind of confirm the stylistic choice, because if I don't use that, it might share some of the stuff with the LoRA, but the kind of core parts of the LoRA won't come through as well. Depending on how you trained it, that might be more controllable, like style, for instance, rather than character. So basic prompt, just gonna generate this on a relatively basic image. Okay, so we got a pretty generic anime image without really any specifics or anything. Like, again, this could be almost anything. So now that we've done that, we're going to try it with the LoRA. So I'm going to just open my LoRA tab here and click on this, and that'll propagate it to the prompt. And then since I used the name of it as the trigger word, I'm just going to copy this and put it in the file here. And then we're just going to go ahead and generate. Now, because this is a pretty generic prompt, image doesn't really have anything going on in it specifically. It's just kind of borrowing something I got from the LoRA. But generally speaking, you can see, okay, here's an image. It's got a lot of the details that we trained into our LoRA in it. Okay, so you can try something a little more robust to just kind of test it more. So for instance, let's see. Okay, so this is something that's not super different than our base images, but it's different enough. So we'll just try it. It is sort of picking up what we put into our LoRA. So we'll try something quite a bit different. Let's say something like that. Okay, so I altered the prompt just a little bit because our first generation didn't come out quite the way I wanted it to. I just have the word bikini here. And you can see the result that we got is relatively accurate to the LoRA, even though this is something that didn't appear in the LoRA at all. Though we do have a weird artifact here, right? So again, not perfect. We'll try regenerating this again and see if it comes out better. All right, so this came out a bit better. No sort of weird artifacts. So essentially the LoRA is working. Now there are definitely ways to either adjust the strength of your LoRA, either down or up, to sort of get the specifics that you want. Adding in specific words that were also in the training can help you get to a specific visual look if you don't tag those specifically. So like, again, when you're making the captions or the tags for the images, if you have different outfits for your character, if you tag each of those specific outfits in only those images, get those tags, then you can sort of control the way that it learns about those specific looks and tie them to that word, kind of like a trigger word in the same way. Now, it's just an example. Instead of doing it sort of this way, we can sort of remove this anime word and put something like fantasy art in instead, and kind of see what we get from that. Okay, so you can see it's still pushing pretty hard towards the LoRA, but it's definitely changing some details. Again, this background, the fact that it's trying to make this armor sort of like leather-like and yellow, that's probably coming from the LoRA and stuff. So if we were to put in the negative prompt here, leather jacket, and anime. Let's see what happens if we do that. That's a little bit better, but still kind of the same. Let's try. Okay, so that's a bit better as far as following our prompt a little bit better. Let's try going another direction. Okay, so let's try that. Okay, that definitely pushed us more towards a realistic style, but we kind of lost a lot of details about the character themselves, like the hair color, a lot of that stuff. So let's see if we can bring some of this back. Something like that. Okay, so we've got back to the red hair and the ears and the tail. And we've got a much more realistic style. Let's see, can we push it much farther? I'm going to try switching to a different checkpoint. That actually worked better than I expected it to. It's definitely not perfect. So let's try making it a little bit better. Okay, so this looks a bit better. You know, it still has some issues, but you know, it's basically capturing the character and putting it into other styles and things without having to sort of try to describe a specific thing and hope for the best. You know, it has a pretty strong like connection with that LoRA, even though I made it on a pretty basic level. Another sort of cool organizational trick, if you're using Forge UI with LoRAs and stuff like that, is go into your LoRA folder, and you're going to hit these little sort of cross tools. This is edit metadata, and you can go in and sort of select what to use it. You can put a description in. You can select, this is SDXL LoRa, so I'm going to select this. You don't have unlimited options here, but you can select it. And then you can put the activation text in. And basically what this will do is it will put it into your prompt automatically when you push the button like I did before. I'll show you the difference. And then you can also put in a negative prompt that comes with it if you want, and then the preferred weight. If you set it to 0, it'll always be 1. But you can also adjust it if it's better. Another thing you can do for making it easy to identify which LoRa you're using is you can replace the preview from nothing to an image that matches it. So I'm using, this is replacing it with the last image that I generated, which is actually not something that I want to do. I mean, it will do it now, but I'll go ahead and save it for now. And right now it's that image. And so just as an example, I can erase this. And then when I push this, it puts the LoRa in there and the name automatically rather than just this part. Okay, so that's nice and quick to help you sort of keep your LoRa's organized and essentially set up so that all you have to do is push a button. Okay, so this seems like a decent image. I'll just use this one for the LoRa. So I'll go back to this thing, hit this button here, and hit replace preview. Leave everything else the same. And now we're good to go. All right, that's pretty much it for how to make a LoRa on CivitAi. Quick and easy. Hopefully that helped. Thanks for watching. It'd be really cool if you liked and subscribed. It helps a lot with discoverability. Thank you.